All right, I think we can proceed now. Others will be joining us as we proceed. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Michael Oludari. Once again, I'm your instructor for um, Dive Africa Cohort 2.5 on the backend track. Sorry, we couldn't have our meeting yesterday. I was a bit under the weather. We had to bring it to today. Sincere apologies for that. Can anyone hear me? All right, I'll be sharing my screen now. Please confirm you can see my screen. All right, so this week we did introduction to backend, getting ourselves familiar with backend development. I explained in one of our videos that backend is like this, the engine of the system. It is the behind the scene of the system. For every website you see, for every mobile app you see, there's a backend powering it. If not, it will be static. And when I say static, it means the data on that website or the app doesn't change. For any website, you're able to log in, you're able to read articles, you're able to perform some actions, and the action stays there for a long period of time. That means the system uses it that have a backend system. All right. Um, so what is backend development? Backend development is the process of building your server-side logics for your website or for your applications, right? Backend is not limited to only websites. Mobile apps needs backend. Desktop applications needs backend. This Zoom we are using uses a backend system. Almost every system you see has a backend system. And why is it important in modern software systems? Um, like I said, it is like the engine of the system. That is what powers the whole system. That is where the business decisions are being made. That is where the business logics are kept. So what you learn in this session, you'll be able to differentiate between front end and back end. You know the languages we can use for back end development and the frameworks available. You know, I think we talked about database, a little introduction on database. So let's proceed. This is front end versus back end. And this is a table of the aspects, the aspects. This is the front end column and the back end column. So front end focus on the user interface and experience. So the primary assignment of the front end is that it is what the site, what the user will be saying, right? It is what decides what the user will be saying and the user experience. Your front end system is what decides the color of a button, the position of a button, the font size, and many other design attributes like that. So when you have a Figma design and you want to bring your system live, the front end is the UI, which the UI UX designer has designed. It is the front end person that will implement it on the front end and then call your own API as the backend engineer. All right. Backend is focused on logic, data, and infrastructure. Yes, your data, your database get on the backend, or your backend, or your database communicates with the backend. You almost never see a front-end system directly communicating with your database. It will always be the back-end system. Why? Because front-end, the user can see everything going on the front-end side. While on the back end, you don't want to expose your database connection string, your database credentials, and some business secrets. You don't want to expose it to the users. It focuses on the infrastructure as well. It is what keeps the whole the whole deployment. Front end to uses deployment, right? But majorly the back end is like the infrastructure, your storage, your database, your cache, and your logs. And most of it are on the back end side. So for the languages, front end uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We have new. Can anyone hear me? All right. Please let me know if my network start breaking. So like I was saying, for languages, front end uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There are other new frameworks that people use mostly now, which is Tailwind, is a CSS library. We have React, which is a JavaScript framework for building front end. And then on the back end, you have Node.js, you have Python, you have Java, you have Go, and you have PHP. So those are the languages you can use to write on the back end. We have other languages as well, but for the sake of this session, we can just stick to this few. And then the front end runs on the client side. I mentioned that earlier. It runs on the browser, or so if it's a website, it runs on the browser, right? And if it is a mobile app, it runs on the user device directly. But the two of them are on the user side. However, for your backend, it runs on the server. Any logic you are running on the backend runs on the server. And then after running the logic of the server, it sends your response back to the front end. And let's go to main role. The main role of front end is to control what user sees and user experience. I mentioned that earlier. And then for backend, what makes it work? When you click on this button and it makes an API request, what actually happens? That is what your backend handles. So what is the role of a backend developer? One of your roles is to build and maintain server-side logics. Server-side logics are logics like authentication, authorization, email sending, notifications handling, what else? Some financial decisions also stays on the backend. As a backend developer, you manage database and data flow. So as a backend developer, it is your role to you one of your role as a backend developer would be to build the database structure, right? This is how this database table is going to connect to this. And for data flow, it is for you to decide how you want to get this data from your database. So there's database, there's the server, which is the backend, and then there is the front end. So when a user makes a request to the backend will contact database, get the data it wants to get, and process it. Then send a response to the front end. Also, your role as a backend developer will be to develop and secure APIs. Yes, it's not just about building. You want to make sure your APIs are secure, because trust me, as a backend developer, people will come and try what you've built. People will come and try to perform a brute force attack, SQL injection. So your role will be to make sure these APIs are secure. Additionally, your role as a backend developer will be to integrate external services. So external services includes AWS, includes communicating with maybe the bank API, just any other external system. So whenever your system, well, let's say you are building for a business and this business has to partner with another business, right? Your backend is going to use API to communicate with the partner's server. and this will be handled by you, the backend developer. All right, that is that. Also, your role as a backend developer is to optimize performance and scalability. Yes, you have to make sure that when the user clicks a button on the front end, the button doesn't take forever to respond. And that is the task of a backend. Why? Because once the front end person connects the button to your API, you have to make sure that your API responds as fast as possible. You have to make sure your API responds as fast as possible. And if it is not responding, that means when multiple users are on your server or your site and they are making requests, that means your server will now have a lot of requests to handle simultaneously. Why? Because the first request that was supposed to be completed is not completed yet. Right. So it will now increase the number of concurrent requests. So you want to make sure your backend is well optimized for performance. And finally, your role as a backend developer is to ensure security, authentication, and authorization. So I mentioned security earlier. Make sure your APIs are secured. Nobody can perform some kind of attacks on it. Though you may not be able to capture everything, but make sure you do everything you can in every use case to capture and implement a security flow for that. And also, your role as the backend developer will be to authenticate every user and authorization. So let me give you the difference between these two. Authentication is like, does this person have the right access to this apartment? Right? Let's say we have 10 people and let's say we have 15 people, right? And all of them wants to enter an apartment. It is authentication that will confirm that, okay, this person is the authentic person to access this place. So let's say we have 15 people, it may be 10 of them that will be able to access that apartment. Are you getting me now? And then for authorization, when we have 10 people in that apartment, let's say we have a room, and this room, we've selected the type of people that should be able to access it. So when these people get to the door, the act of checking if they are actually, we've authenticated them, they now have access to the house, to the apartment. But this particular room, do they have access to it? That's authorization. We want to confirm that they are not they are not seeing more than they are supposed to see. They can't perform actions more than they are supposed to perform or more than they can perform. So that is that about the role of a backend developer. So let's go to the backend ecosystem. Your server handles client requests and runs backend code. Yes, your server receives your incoming request from the front end. So what the server will now do is to route the request to the logic you've written that, okay, when this person is trying to access the user's endpoint, this is the logic, this is the backend code I want you to use. That's the major assignment of your server. And then for the database, it stores, retrieves, and manages data. Yes, just like the name is database. So it is where your data are being stored. And when you need it again, you go back there and retrieve it. If you need to update it, you can update it. And if you need to delete it, you can delete it. And then what is API? API is the bridge between front end and back end. So generally, API is what two systems use to communicate to each other, right? It doesn't have to be front end and back end. It can be back end and back end. It can be back end and it can be front end and back end. It can be majorly is either front end and back end, mobile and back end, or back end and back end. Also, there's authentication. It controls access and identity. Yes. So once the person enters that room, you confirm that, okay, this person is actually who they say they are. The infrastructure. Deployment, scaling, and monitoring. Yes, when you deploy, you want to make sure that your server can handle the number of requests your system has. So if it is a very new business, you can use maybe a very small server, and then when the business start growing, you can now start increasing the size of the server, either vertically or horizontally. That is scaling. And then monitoring is that you are checking. You have your monitoring tools in place to let you know that, okay, at this time of the day, so time, so day, this happened, right? So you'll be able to, maybe if it is an error, you'll be able to fix the error and just move on. And then if it is maybe a downtime, your monitoring tool would capture that and inform you whenever you visit it. All right. What is a server? A server is a computer or a software that responds to requests. I'd originally say a server is a computer or software that handles backend logic, right? It handles your backend logic and return and give a response to the request. So let me explain it. A server is a computer, right? Just that what makes it different from our own computer is that our computer is our computer cannot be on every time, right? Our computer cannot be on every time. And if it is on every time, there's no assurance that you'd have internet connectivity every time. So what's the solution to this? There's now somewhere we call data center that have multiple computers, multiple physical computers, right? 247 power supply and 247 internet with high bandwidth. So that instead of you trying to set up your own system to be responding to requests, you can just pay the hosting provider that you need a server of this size, of this RAM, of this disk storage. So they'll be the one managing the infrastructure. However, is a physical computer somewhere in the world. All right. An example is Node.js server, Nginx server, and Apache server. And then we have primarily three types of server. We have the web server. So this will serve static pages like HTML, CSS, or static JavaScript. We have the application server, which should be able to run business logics, should be able to run backend code. And we have the database server, which is the server where the database is being stored, right? You can as well have one server that handles this theory. But for big organizations that are already making big profits, they would always want to separate these concerns. What are APIs? APIs are application programming interface. It allows communication between front-end and back-end. I said this earlier. It allows communication between two systems. It doesn't have to be front-end and back-end. You can use an API to communicate between a back-end and a back-end. You can use it to communicate between your own personal computer, right, to a back-end, to a server. You can use it to communicate to the front-end to back-end. So most likely what you see is back-end communicating with back-end, front-end communicating with back-ends, and mobile app communicating with back-ends. So the reason front-end cannot communicate with front-end is because it doesn't, so it can communicate, right? But there's no logic happening. Why? Because the front-end doesn't handle server-side logics. So if you are making an API request to a front-end website, it will just return you a static data, mostly HTML document. And then we have three common types of API. We have the REST APIs, which is the most popular, and almost every system you see uses that. We have the GraphQL, which is more advanced, and we have the gRPC as well. But majorly, people use REST API the most, and then for large businesses, they want to switch to GraphQL. Introduction to Node.js. So why are we using Node.js for development? Let me give you a backstory. When you are building with Node.js, you use JavaScript, right? And JavaScript was originally built to run on the browser. It was originally built to run on the browser. So there was a time. Okay, let me rephrase. It was originally built to run on the server with an engine called the V8 engine on Chrome. So most of these browsers have different engines that run JavaScript for them, but the main character here is the Chrome V8 engine, right? So sometimes in 2009, someone wants to. There's this guy called Ryan. He wanted to execute JavaScript code outside the browser. So what did he do? He took the V8 engine from Chrome, from the Chrome browser. He took the source code, made some adjustments to it to make sure that JavaScript can run outside the browser. So when he finished these things, he called the system Node.js. So what Node.js does is that it allows JavaScript code to run outside the browser, which is your server. Okay, I have that here. It allows JavaScript to run on server side, non-blocking, event-driven. So JavaScript can receive, sorry, Node.js can retrieve multiple requests at the same time, can receive multiple requests at the same time rather, and it is event-driven architecture, which means these events will trigger another action will trigger another event, and so on. It is great for building fast and scalable application. Yes, like I said, there are some backend languages that whenever you make a request, the system will first boot, and after booting, it will now process your request. For JavaScript, it is one application that is already running on the backend, on the server rather. So you won't need to start booting it on every request. It will just receive the request, handle the logic, and then return the response back to the user. That is why it is considered fast. And it has a huge ecosystem called NPM. It has a huge ecosystem called NPM. So NPM is, let me bring it here. So NPM is like a repository for Node.js. A repository for Node.js. Sorry, not only Node.js. And it seems to be affecting a couple of systems, including NPM. But I can assure you this is not something that happens often. All right, let me see if I can search a package. Let's search for Express. Yes, so this is like the framework we'll be using for backend. Fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. And so majorly when you need let's say a package, you have a logic you want to write, and instead of you having to start writing it one by one, you want like a package that already handles the logic that you can just install and use. So NPM is your guy. All right. That is that about the introduction to Node.js. So what can you build with Node.js? You can build RESTful APIs. You can build real-time applications, charts, notifications. You can build microservices. So microservices are, let's say, WhatsApp now. WhatsApp is a complete system. But when you say you want to take the notification module or the WhatsApp status module and put it in a separate system, that makes the separate system a microservice, which means it can stand alone. Let's say every part of the system are microservices. That means if one part of the system is down, it doesn't affect the other part. Are you getting me? You can use it to build a command line tool rather. So command line tools are tools you use on your terminal. You use commands to execute them. And finally, you can use Node.js to build a streaming service. A streaming service, maybe something like YouTube or Netflix. Node.js is a guy for that. That will be all for today's lesson. I'll be taking questions now. So if you have a question, you can just raise your hand and I'll call your name. All right, Davis.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Thanks for the class. I want to ask. I have three questions here.
Okay.
I don't know. Should I read the question or you take it one by one?
You can read the question.
Okay. So the first question is, can the it's concerning the server that you explained. I want to ask if it's possible for the host server to like access the server that we are using under it. That's the first question. Also, the second question is, um, it's concerning this thing you said concerning the maintenance of the code. How to it's just I want to like understand something. Why is it that we have to like cross check the code when we've written it correctly? Like how are we going to have bug after when we've written the app, like for now we've written a code now, so why do we have to like cross check it over and over again for bugs when we first launch it there wasn't any bug or something like that? Sure, that was I'm just confused about that concept. And for my third question is concerning we using Node.js. I was just like, why are we using Node.js and not Python? Because I had I don't know, from what from my research, I heard Python is more like it's more in demand than Node.js. Yeah, thank you, sir. Those are my questions.
Okay, I'll take it one by one. So you said when you deploy your backend logic on your server, can the hosting company see your code? Right? Was that the question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, they can. They can see your code, but um, you most likely not experience that. Why? Because every hosting company does not check, though they have access to it, they don't check it. And again, if they want to check it, they have millions of websites, billions of websites that they've hosted. So unless you are doing something very interesting that they want to go and visit it, or in another case is maybe you have a support, you need help with something and you want their support people to check it for you. But if not, they are not going to check it. So the second question is,
Thank you.
question was that why do you have to always check system when you already tested it and made the deployment, right?
Yes.
So the thing with that is that no matter how much you test, right? No matter all the use case you tested, there's always something you miss out. There will always be something you miss out. And it is possible that you will test it, your QA persons will test it, that's the quality assurance people will test it, and they're not going to see that issue. But when the user logs into the app, they are going to see it. So you want to fix that. Many users have multiple behaviors, so you really can't capture everybody's use case at once. So the third one is why Node.js and not Python. Okay, so for the reason we are using Node.js is because Node.js is good, Python is good, every backend language is good, right? But the major reason we choose Node.js is that was the That was the choice of the Dive Africa team. That's number one. Number two, um, Node.js uses JavaScript, and JavaScript has a very large ecosystem than Python. So if you are building something in Node.js and you are struggling with maybe a logic, you most likely see someone that have experienced what you're experiencing, and have a solution for it. The same for Python, but JavaScript has a very large ecosystem.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah,
All right. Thank you, sir.
you're welcome.
Um.
All these languages are good for market. They get the job done.
Okay. Also, I just want to add this to it, to my question. So, for someone that wants to go from, is it advisable to go from backend to machine learning? Like, I don't know. Can I don't know. I don't want to ask for your thoughts on something like that.
Okay, it is possible to go from backend to machine learning. Yes, it is possible. Possible to go from any language to another language, right? The main thing is you understanding what language for. So once you understand one, it will be easier for you to grasp other ones.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, let's have Miss Glory now.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, sir, please. I don't really understand how the servers, like the types of servers, how they work. I don't know if you can expatiate on that, sir.
Okay, we have many types of servers. We have the database server, we have the application server, and we have the web server. Right? These are the major ones we want to focus on. So the database server is the one that keeps your data. So your database sits on that server and nothing else is there, just your database. And then your application server is the one that has your business logic, which is your backend code. So most likely your application server, which is where your backend code is, will communicate to your database server. You have to note that your database and your backend doesn't have to be in the same server. They can be in different servers. Just make sure that they are not too far from each other. You know, I said these servers are physical servers. Make sure they are not too far from each other. And then we have the web servers, which majorly the parts of those servers is just to render HTML static websites with nothing serious going on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's have Ms. Nifemi.
Good evening, sir.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Nifemi. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the class, sir. So, my question is, please, what's the difference between Node.js and Next.js? That's my question, sir. You get my question, sir?
Yes, I get it. You're asking the difference between Node.js and Next.js, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Node.js is majorly for the backend, right? It runs on the server. But Next.js is you can build a full stack application with Next.js, both the front end and the back end. You can do that with Next.js. So you have your front end code and the back end code in Next.js. And then for Node.js, you only have your back end codes.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, let's have Mr. Ibrahim.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Thank you for the class, sir. And so my question is like, I don't know, I can't say out of the class we have this night, but my question is, what's the difference between backend and cybersecurity, sir?
Okay. The backend is just the business logic, the code that runs the server side logics, right? And then cybersecurity, your task is to make sure that this system is secure, right? So what cybersecurity people do usually is to try and hack the system, and when they see a loophole, they inform the backend developer, and the backend developer fix that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome. Let's have Mr. Talib.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you for the class. My question is about what Mr. Nifemi said. He said the difference between Nest.js and Node.js. And you answer him that Node.js, Nest.js can run front end code and back end code. So my question is that if someone writes backend code on Node.js, can that person deploy it or put the code on Nest.js? That's my question, sir.
Um, so for that, both are JavaScript, right? But you still have to update a few things for it to work with Next.js.
Okay, that means if you want to learn Nest.js, you have to learn that one separately.
Next.js, this is my own from my own perspective. Next.js focus majorly on front end, right? I think
Okay.
the advantage you'd have on Next.js is the SEO, which is the server side rendering, which means your logic would what's it called? Your logic would execute from the backend, sorry, from the server, and then send back static HTML to the front end,
All right, sir.
to the browser rather. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.
So do we have any other question? You can stop raising your hand, Mr. Toib and Mr. Ibrahim. So does anyone have any other question?
Yes, sir.
Sorry?
Please, I want to ask when we the other videos for the course be dropped so that we can just consider the backend course.
Yes, you are going to get them tomorrow. It will be uploaded tomorrow.
All right, sir. Thank you.
All right. So I guess we don't have any other questions again. Um, we'll meet again next week. Like I said, your videos will be uploaded tomorrow. Okay. Mr. Davis.
Oh, so I want to ask, how would the class going to be henceforth? Would it be Monday or still be Sunday?
It will be Sundays.
Okay.
So do we have any other question from anyone else? All right. I guess if not, it is okay to end the session. Thank you all for joining. Apologies once again for not being able to meet up yesterday. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Nice.
Good night.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, sir.